The Hasan Piker and Trash Taste podcast fallout continues.
Hey, what's up, guys? Riff here. So today we're going to be going over some updates regarding the Trash Taste podcast fiasco. So in case you don't know, Trash Taste is a podcast run by the Anime Man, CDawg VA, and Giguk. They talk about anime and Japanese culture and things like that. And recently they had an episode get a lot of backlash thanks to their special guest, Hasan Piker. You can see the like-dislike ratio is just over a 24% like ratio on this video. Tens of thousands of comments. All of them pretty mad about the choice of guest, Hasan Piker, based on the many controversial things he has said over the past couple of years. And today we're going to be looking at...
This is, by the way, insane, considering all three, not talking about Hasan, are kind of like big streamers, YouTubers, and things like that. And their combined audience could not overwhelm the combined hate towards Hasan, which is amazing.
At the first response from anyone at Trash Taste regarding this situation. I think the things that are said by CDawg VA in this case are actually pretty interesting and probably answer most of the questions people have. Now, the first...
Is it gonna be shilling? Is it gonna be shilling and deflection? Let's see.
First update to give you guys before we get into the new stuff. Hasan has been banned on Twitch. Hell hath frozen over. He's actually been banned for once. And that stems from his recent comments where he advocated for violence against a sitting U.S. official. I guess that's what it takes to actually get punished if you're Hasan Piker.
There goes your free speech, America. Damn.
On Twitch. But he has been banned. How long that lasts, who knows? Probably not very long. But here is the response we're looking at today. I was uploaded on Connor's clip channel here. You can see the reception of this is, you know, still somewhat controversial. It's obviously a lot better than the podcast episode. I think some people are still angry about it, but it's titled How Trash Taste Tried to Deal with the Hasan Controversy. Now,
Is that an official channel? Because it doesn't look like it. It has only 90k, views. But it is a full 17-minute video, which is wild. Then again, it makes sense. Typically, when people like this, like Mudahar or whoever apologize, they do it on a off-brand, third-created, fresh channel, so they can say, "Oh, but I apologized." Yeah. Everyone knows this apology doesn't mean shit. You're only apologizing because you got caught, not because you understand that you did wrong.
It's a 17-minute video. We're just going to kind of hit the key parts for brevity's sake here, but let's start off right here.
The way that we handle it, and the way that you should handle a lot of these things when they happen, like drama, is that sometimes it's just better to just not address anything and just let it just fade.
Unironically, that's probably the best answer for most controversy, especially if you're someone who makes a lot of content, especially if you're like a...
Didn't work out for Dr. Disrespect.pdf file.
Daily uploading channel or streamer or something. Just like keep moving, unless it's really bad. In this case, it's pretty bad, right? A lot of people are upset, but I think the issue here is that they made that pinned comment about deleting comments, and it's like they started some sort of a response, which makes people expect a full response. If they're going to touch one subject...
Yeah, the deleting comment thing seemed super sus, because we didn't find some of the previously top comments, but then again, that is a YouTube thing that YouTube sometimes does, that if it's a new video, the, comments kind of mess up, but who knows?
Eventually, you would expect they're going to touch all the subjects, and that's kind of what they're doing here, as it would play out.
Mainly because when things get too heated, almost, no matter what you would say in that moment, people are still going to be going to be unhappy. Or at least, the group of people that want an apology or whatever, anything like that. If you say anything, they're just going to be more unhappy, and it just adds more fire to the flame. So that's why generally we're just kind of like, all right, we'll just let it die down, let it move on. Let them get over it and have their fun.
Well, what's an apology if you don't have a ukulele or anything like that?
For the week. Most of them are brigaders. Well, okay, look, here's the thing, right? Here's the thing.
Hope.
So... this is going to get clipped as well. I know this now. So I want to be very mindful about how I approach this. If I'm gonna mention anything here, is that I think
You are, in my opinion, so fucked if a situation like this happens and your honestly best approach is, oh, I'm not gonna say anything. And that's it, gonna ignore it. Just let it fade away. Because that means that you know that you fucked up, but you're not even willing to admit it. You know that it was wrong, because think about this situation on a logical term, right? They know who Hasan Piker is. They know what Hasan Piker stands for. And they're like, oh yeah, buddy, sure, come on our podcast. And then they're like, oh, we're not political, or some kind of crap that they're gonna probably try to pull. Okay? Now, you know who this person is. You know what that person stands for. You know how he operates. You know everything. And you are willing to be like, oh yeah, we like you, but I mean, we're just gonna ignore the political things. That's literally your whole existence. We're gonna ignore all that. That is such bull. And I think most people obviously understand it. It's complete BS.
there are a couple of important things to mention. So I think, first of all, I think from our podcast perspective and from our perspective, if it is fair to say that if we don't engage in politics publicly, because it's just a mess. None of us live in the US. None of us are in.
There you go. Oh, but we're not political. Expected.
Any of these kind of intense political situations. Whatsoever. I think it is also fair to say that, why would we bring someone political on? Which I think is very fair. And
yeah, that's a very fair point. The fact he was there just in general wasn't very good, but it really wasn't just because he's a political streamer. I think they could have brought a lot of political streamers onto the podcast and wouldn't have had anywhere near the backlash. The reason people were so mad at this particular episode is clearly because of Hasan. And it's not just because he talks about politics, it's because people don't like the unhinged stuff he has said time and time again.
Extremely, very fair.
By the way, you can clip this. Hasan is gonna rise up in popularity 2 times in the upcoming year, okay? Everyone is tired currently, okay? There's a bunch of there's a lot of stuff. People don't appreciate the open lies that are currently being spread all around American media. And I think this could contribute to Hasan's audience exploding rapidly in the future.
Criticism of us to do, which I agree with. And then I think the most annoying thing from my perspective and this whole thing is that there were legitimately fans of Trash Taste who were unhappy. And it's frustrating because you can't see or actually hear from people who watch Trash Taste or who aren't happy because it just turned into a political dick swinging contest.
Okay, I think there's some bit of fairness there. It's hard to get a perspective on what the actual Trash Taste podcast fans think when there's so much negativity coming from people who probably aren't subscribed and are just going to this video to basically jump in on what's going on. And as I said in my previous coverage of this whole thing, I don't think the backlash on the episode was necessarily a repudiation of Trash Taste. I think they grossly underestimated how much people don't like Hasan outside his community. And I think this was more of a repudiation of Hasan himself.
That is so wild, by the way, to underestimate how much people hate Hasan, because it should be something that's blindingly obvious and right there in front of you.
People saw the podcast episode as a lightning rod for their dislike of that man. And unfortunately for them, it's their podcast. So they're the ones kind of seeing the public reflection of that with the like-dislike ratio and all the comments. But the anger was mostly towards Hasan. They didn't like the fact that they were on the podcast, but they're much more angry and seeing it as an opportunity to talk about him and show that they don't like him and to repudiate him publicly. And just happened, the vehicle for this was their podcast episode. And the interesting thing too, I think he talks about this later, but you can't really tell based on an outside perspective. I don't have their analytics, but looking at their Trash Taste YouTube channel, at most, they've lost 10,000 subs. Because that's the way the metric moves. It's every 10,000 subs. Once you get...
Wow. That is actually still a lot. Wow. That is unironically a lot. Because yeah, people hate Hasan over all places, so they're gonna jump on the opportunity to call him out on being shit. Obviously, on the Trash Taste podcast, but the fact that it actually means people left the Trash Taste podcast means that their fans were not happy. I mean, when you have fans, it's you have the leverage, sadly, to do a lot of bad things and get away with it for a pretty extensively long time. And no one's gonna really be too mad, it's not like you failed once, okay, who cares, failed twice, okay, it's not looking good, failed thrice, okay, that's too much. You can literally fail like tens of times sometimes in some people's situations before the fans actually start being like, okay, this is too much. And this is like one time when Hasan is this hated and 10k people leave, that says a lot.
Past 1 million. So from what I can see, they've lost no more than 10,000. That's at the very most they've lost. So they might have only lost a few thousand subs over this, despite having an absolute nightmare of a reaction to that episode.
About which side, which is bad on our part, because like we've never had any politics or any kind of talks like that in the comments. So I think it was kind of bad of us to kind of almost invite that. Second of all, the thing that was also very frustrating is that no matter what people were saying, there was a lot of brigading on a lot of sides, and I think that two things can be true at once. There were Trash Taste fans who were unhappy, and there also was brigading happening, which is also very frustrating to deal with, because then it's like, okay, now we can't actually listen to any criticism on the episode because both sides are jumping in, right?
Well, I think that is somewhat important. I mean, yeah, there were definitely people jumping in. Like I said, that podcast episode was like a lightning rod for people who don't like Hasan, and that's a way to show their disliking of him. But I think also, as he'll go on to say, is he wasn't aware of all these things involving politics and Hasan and some of his takes, and it's like, well, that's maybe an opportunity to read some of those. And
that is such a blatant cop-out, obviously. Oh, I had no idea Hasan was a terrorist supporter. Yeah, really? Really? So what? Can just any hobo get on your shitty podcast? Is that the deal then? That's what you're saying? Because it kind of looks like it. Like, what do you mean?
And understand why people are so mad and why it was a bad idea to have him on the podcast. But I do generally get what he's trying to go after here.
And I even told Hasan, I was like, hey man, can you not? Like, it's bad enough that one side is doing this. Please don't bring up the fucking episode and be like, hey, send people. I was like, just be above this. Don't.
I'm glad also you told him to knock that off, because that made things infinitely worse. Okay, there was already a lot of negativity heading towards the episode, but when he said the whole counter brigading comment and encouraged his audience to jump in there and try to change the narrative, that made people even more divisive, and that made people
by the way, now that he says this, so I asked Hasan to not do any of that, means that he knows that Hasan is well known for brigading things, literally right there out in the open, by the way, which is a Twitch terms of service violation, as much as I know. But whatever. Him just saying this means one of two things, and one of two things must be 100% true, because there's no way it can't be. One is he lied about this statement and is throwing Hasan under the bus to save his own ass and save the podcast's ass, saying, oh, don't attach extra attention to this, and he didn't actually do that with Hasan. Or two, which seems honestly more likely, is that he told this to Hasan, and Hasan was like, okay, and then Hasan got pissed and he said, fuck you, I'm still gonna do it anyway, it is what it is. Yeah. So one of these must be true, because there is no world where one of these isn't true.
Even more gung-ho about trying to send a message with this podcast and the choice of special guest.
Don't do this. Because look, if people who have very extreme beliefs want to go crazy, I can't stop them. They can do whatever they want. But you hope that at least, another side wouldn't do that as well. So I told him, I was like, hey, please don't do that.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, man, okay, my bad.
And then he did?
But I think as well, I told Hasan as well, I was like, hey, look, the show is not political. We don't want to deal with politics. We're most likely not going to have...
I told you. I fucking told you. So this is how you know these people are bad faith. Because you're literally taking on Hasan, someone who is blatantly 100% political in every iota of his existence, and you're like, oh, we don't want things to get political. It's a lie. This is obviously a lie. So all of this video is lies, just to protect their asses and make people stop being negative towards them. All of this is 100% gaslighting.
You on again? No, and that's not like anything like, hey man, it should...
Well, no, at this point, like, what else are you gonna do? Like, you could, it could have been an unfair situation. Let's say instead of Hasan, it was someone else completely innocent, and for some reason people went absolutely ape shit and were angry about it. Like, yeah, maybe it's unfair in that situation, but you can't do it again because people would be even more angry. And with Hasan, yeah, he was on the podcast 2 years ago, and I believe the like-dislike ratio on that was like 90%. But a lot has changed over 2 years. I mean, he's made more unhinged takes, but most importantly, I think more people are aware of the things he has said, and that's why people were so ready to jump on that particular episode, the latest one he appeared on. And yeah, you can't bring him back now. Like, it would be even worse, honestly. Speaking as someone who is many moons ago, I made a video, I think it was a waifu tier list. People didn't really like some of my choices. So I doubled down the next day and said, aha, you're right. You guys were right. You thought I ranked these characters too low. You're right. I got to move them even lower. People didn't find that very funny. So I guess doubling down sometimes when people are mad like that doesn't really work out too well. And this
is why so many people are fence sitters, by the way, because you don't have to deal with the negativity. The reality is, unless you're explicitly a fence sitter, you know who I'm looking at, there's gonna be negative outcry, okay? Or unless you always side with the most popular opinion, there's gonna be negative outcry, and that's just normal.
is a no-brainer at this point. How could you possibly have him back on? But I believe it's right here. He actually mentions the specific number of subs they lost, and it's a pretty surprising number.
I can tell you exactly how many right now. Let me find out. We lost 4,000 subscribers, which is not a lot, but I also think it is.
Wait, that's impossible. Social Blade would not, just like Rev said, Social Blade only shows the subscriber gain / loss when that 10k mark is breached if you're a big enough channel. Only then will it show it. So the fact that he's saying 4k and Rev's saying Social Blade showed -10, yeah, sus.
It is disingenuous, and I think it's bad to pretend like, that people aren't unhappy.
Well, I mean, first of all, 4,000 subs, losing 4,000 on a video like that with so much...
It's still a big deal, because it literally shows how hated Hasan is, that literally people who cared enough to subscribe to you are now unsubscribing because of one choice. That just shows how much people dislike him.
Negative feedback is actually a very small number. I mean, 4,000 is nothing to, like... Wow.
And again, I don't like Hasan, but I think Hasan is gonna get a resurgence. I think he will. I think give it a couple of years, and I think his audience is gonna go up, unless he completely destroys himself at that point, obviously, which could happen. Which could definitely happen.
Off your hands at, like, it's still a significant number, and it shows that people who were fans of the podcast and were subscribed were not happy. But it also shows that a lot of the people, like I said, the video is like a lightning rod for people who don't like Hasan, so they went over there to show their disliking of...
Well, yeah, but those people who don't know about the podcast and go there and dislike it because Hasan, they can't really unsubscribe like that, because if they subscribe and unsubscribe, That's just a net. That's just 0 at the end for statistics.
Of him, and that's reflected by the sub numbers there. And again, you know, with a channel, but they have like 1.5 million subs, to lose 4,000 is like a pretty small number. It's not insignificant, but you would expect it to be a lot higher given what happened and how angry people were about the podcast itself. But let's skip ahead to the next section here.
Well, there was obviously a lot of bandwagoning on it because people were, you know, loving it and people don't like Hasan. And so people were jumping on it and making videos about it.
Hey! Nice. Anyway, that was Rev Says Desu. Bye!